They're your go-to, the person you run to when you hear great news, or even when you have a silly story, even when you just need a shoulder to cry on, an ear to listen without reservation.
And no, we are not talking about your significant other. Think before then. Who did you have before them?
That's right, we're referring to your friends.
And that's the title of our episode today is, friendship and the love of the friendships that we have. So pull up a chair with a friend, a good friend, hopefully. Grab a cup of coffee where people talking love and relationships and friendships on INC Heart and Soul.
Welcome to INC Heart and Soul. I'm Lois Paula Returbin.
And I'm Martin Zeruto. And we've been talking a lot on Heart and Soul about courtship, finding the one, the love, and the little things in marriage. And a lot of the feedback that we've been receiving is super, super, super positive. We're so very thankful. Everybody asks, can you guys talk about long-distance relationships? Can you guys talk about how to impress a girl, how to, put a really good outfit together and make her think, wow, you look amazing. All these really great conversations and topics in between finding the one and being the one and looking for the one. But today, we're not talking about that. We are not talking about that today. Today, we are talking about friendships. And it's about how we develop those friendships with our boys, with our girls, the ones who have our back no matter what happens.
Which can definitely be the base and the foundation of our potential relationships in the future. We know we have friendships of all different kinds. Sometimes they're long-lasting. Sometimes we've just met them. But today we'll focus on friendships that challenge us, friendships that might have changed us, and definitely when we need it the most, friendships that uplift us.
Yeah, and it's crazy. You look back in your life and you think, there's been so many people who have helped or contributed to making us who we are because of these friendships. And it's because of all these crazy things that have happened. And you have this crazy story about this one time that we did this thing a couple of years. It's like, remember that time in 2011, right? Or there's that embarrassing thing that happened. Like, oh my God, you remember last Thursday? Yeah, that's kind of stories that we're hoping will enter our discussions today. Real, actual situations and moments that really help develop an amazing, amazing, lasting friendship. So let's get started with our first panelist. He's a great friend of mine who, contrary to many of our other friends who we may have known for our whole life or for like tens and tens of years, I've actually only known him for a couple of years, but the journey in my life and the journey in his life ended up converging according to God's plan, and we ended up becoming really, really great friends, and I do consider him a blessing and a good friend in my life. So joining with us today is my very good friend, Leonard.
Hi, I'm very happy to be here.
Leonard, can you tell us, how did you meet Martin?
You're going to probably have to fill in some of the gaps because I've been actively repressing some of these memories. So feel free to jump in, Brother Martin.
So he was in a relationship and then that didn't work out, and then he was studying, and then I had found out that his ex was now single, and so I wanted to get to know her. And in my head, having not really been friends with Leonard, I was just thinking hey, just be a nice guy, bro code, or be a bro in the faith, and just kind of let him know, hey, just want to let you know I'm going to get to know your ex. Hope that's okay. And I don't know. I think I was just really excited to try and get to know this person, and I didn't really factor in a lot of the other things that maybe Leonard could have been going through or the way it could have been perceived. So that was the message I sent. Hey, hope everything is all right. I don't know what you're going through in life, but I just wanted to let you know I was going to go for your ex-girlfriend. Right. See you later.
Right. So my first thought was, who is this guy? And my second thought was, can he nerve of this guy to message me out of nowhere? For my reply, I just kind of gave it to him. I'm like, who do you think you are, Martin? This isn't cool at all.
Leonard, looking back now, you reacted. Obviously, we're human, and relationships are very close to our heart. And so you have this person, this brother, coming up to you. Looking back at it now, do you feel as if you reacted in the right way, or there's something that you could have done differently, or you feel like it panned out just the way God wanted it to?
I think the latter. Just looking back, I just realized how far we've come, he and I. So it's just that initial part was a bit rough, And I'm just glad that, we've gotten over that hump and, become good friends that we are today. So,
Yeah. And so fast forward, obviously you had your differences. That relationship, came and gone. How did you come to be the great friends, the great brothers that you guys are now?
so we were at Wendy's, and I remember just talking to like old friends that I haven't seen in a while, and um, Martin and a couple of other, like four other brothers, they just asked me, hey, do you want to come over to the car? And I was just kind of perplexed. I was like, what, are we going on a coffee run or what's happening? So we go into the car, like we just started talking about each other's problems, what they're going through. And here I am, like a stranger to like most of these guys, and especially Brother Martin, and like they're pouring their hearts out. They're like letting me know what's going on in their lives. And like at the end of all of that, they had a devotional prayer in the car, and that just really got to me. Like these five guys in the car, just praying for each other. Like even though they don't know me, they're praying for me. Like that's something that was pretty moving. So I wasn't sure of Martin's intentions before, but just for him to like pray for me is something that I still remember to this day, and I think that's what founded like my trust, my started my trust for him. So yeah.
Very cool. Martin, was that something that you and your guy friends did regularly?
Just through circumstance of always performing for these activities, me and these three other guys became very close, and we started having this thing called Devo, where we would go into the car or somewhere. If we were at home already, we would literally conference call, and then we would just say, okay, well, what's our blessing? Everybody says what their blessing was for that day, no matter how big or small. And I don't even know how that started, but it just we just started praying. We just started talking about our faith and what was the challenges of the day and what our individual blessing was. And then that one night in blessing, that one night at Wendy's, I was like, I've tried everything. I just wanted him to see, like, our capacity to show love for each other as brothers, Like, if in everything that I've tried so far it wasn't working, then at least this is, which I guess should have been my first resort, but like, this is my last resort. I'm just going to lay it all out. Like, these are my friends, and I want you to know them, and I want you to know their struggles, and I want you to know that we care for each other, and I want you to know that you can have this too. We're offering this to you. We want you to be a part of this. And that's how it started every single night for a good year and a half, including Leonard. It was 5 guys every night on the phone or in a car talking about the blessing of the day and then praying for each other at the end.
Our next panelist, we've actually known each other almost our whole life. I met her within the first decade of my life. We've been sisters, close friends, again, for more than 20 years, and we've definitely witnessed some of our darkest and, of course, brightest moments in life. Crystal Joy Quarles, welcome.
Hello.
Crystal is no longer here. We no longer live in the same city.
Was it hard for you to move away from your friends or that base of friendships that was in SoCal or in Southern California?
There was a series of events that happened in my life where I kind of just needed something. I didn't know what it was exactly, but just one day last December, I received a phone call, and I was asked to move up here to work for the U.S. main office, and I literally packed my bags and I just left.
Mm-hmm.
I took that as an answer to everything I was praying for. So.
I mean, because you represent a lot of people who, especially young folks who are really just trying to make something of themselves and really trying to find who they are in this world. Mm-hmm. We're still friends and we still see each other through all these different activities. We get to reconnect. So do you feel like moving away has been beneficial to you and your relationships? Has it strengthened your friendships with others? How do you feel like it's affected?
It's kind of like a breathing space.
When you were leaving, did you think that you would miss all of your friends?
Yes and no.
Oh, wow, both. Why didn't you think you were going to miss them?
Um, because I knew that they were always going to be there.
Right.
I knew that my friends would always be there, no matter what, whether it be a telephone call, a text. My family is in San Diego, in National City, so there are going to be times when I would just go home, which I have, and
You get to
I
see your
just
friends.
exactly. So I
But were
know
there
that they're
some friends
always
that
going to
you
be
wanted
there.
to get away from?
Not necessarily.
No? That's
um,
a good sign.
No, no. But I knew that there was that I needed to breathe. I knew that for a fact.
Do you ever feel like your friends, sometimes they don't understand where you're at in life, and that can feel a little suffocating because they're always asking you, like, what's going on? Are you okay? Is everything okay?
It's more like you don't know how to explain yourself. For me, I didn't know how to explain myself. I was kind of like, friends would ask me like, what's wrong or what happened or stuff like that, and I just couldn't be like, kind of stumped because here I was trying to understand what it was I was going through. I had no idea how to open myself up to them. And so that's pretty much why I needed the breathing space so that I can really gather myself and understand my own whatever it was I was going through. I needed to
Hmm.
understand it for myself so that when the time was right, when I felt comfortable, when I felt sure, then that's the time I would be more than happy to let them know what was going on or what happened or how I was feeling.
And I guess on the other side of that, LP, if you've been friends with Crystal for a long time, were you one of those friends who were just like, I don't know what's going on with Crystal? Is she okay? Like she's just moving away? Like what's going on? Be honest.
No, no, absolutely. And Crystal, we've learned over the years, at least with my relationship with her, we've definitely had, our time to learn each other, to learn ourselves. Man, Crystal and I had our times. But I
Uh-huh.
definitely, when she was going through this period of her life, similarly, I was going through my things, but it was a complete acknowledgement of it's okay. I am your friend and I am your sister and I will be there 100%, but I don't need to know exactly how you're feeling or why you're feeling like that. Why? Because I fully trusted that she was praying and that God was going to be there for her no matter what. This is a perfect opportunity to bring in some guidance from the minister of the gospel who we're very grateful to have joining us today. We have Brother Jojo Bayani, minister of the gospel. Hello, po.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hello, Brother
Good
Jojo.
po.
Thank you so much for joining us again. And we definitely would love to ask, if the Bible has anything to say about friendships in general, and how are we, what are the rules? Are we supposed to have rules for friendships? Are there to-dos and not to-dos? Is there a story in the Bible of two friends that we can use as an example?
Yeah, absolutely. The Bible does give us guidance, a lot of guidance with regard to friends and choosing the kind of companions that we should have in life. If we read from First Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33 of the Expanded Bible, this can read. It says, "Do not be fooled, deceived, or misled. Bad friends or company will ruin good habits or character or morals." And so there is a guideline with regard to choosing the people that we will have as friends in life. The Bible says that one can actually deceive himself if one chooses a friend or a companion incorrectly. An example of good friends. There are. In First Samuel chapter 18, verses 1 and 3 from the God's Word version, it says the following. David finished talking to Saul. After that, Jonathan became David's closest friend. He loved David as much as he loved himself. So Jonathan made a pledge of mutual loyalty with David because he loved him as much as he loved himself. Uh, For those who are not familiar with the story, Saul was the first king that God chose in order to take care of his people, the people of Israel. The Bible mentions Jonathan. Jonathan was one of the sons of King Saul. And the Bible also mentions a man named David. According to biblical history, it was actually David who became the successor of Saul as king over all of Israel. Uh, there was a time that David became an excellent warrior, and King Saul became very envious, very jealous of David, and he actually made three attempts to kill David because he was so jealous of David's success and popularity. But Saul's own son Jonathan became, as we just mentioned from the Bible, David's closest friend, and because of that friendship, Jonathan pledged mutual loyalty with David, and so they were, if we can use the term lifelong, they became lifelong friends. Uh, I think that's what you want to have as your friend, someone who will pledge loyalty. If we look up the word loyalty, it's defined as constant support for someone or from someone, and that's exactly the kind of friendship that they had. Uh, we knew that because Saul displeased our Lord God, even when he was alive, he was already slowly but surely being rejected by God, and he kind of felt that God was leaving him, and he became even more jealous of David, and again made several attempts to take David's life. But because of this loyalty and friendship that David had with Jonathan, Saul's son, there was even an instance in the Bible where uh, you know God actually used Jonathan in order to save David's life. And so, you talk about friends who have your back. That was the friendship that Jonathan had with David. It's one of the best stories of the Bible regarding true friendship.
Naka Jojo, I know we may not have them here today as guests, and thank you so much for those amazing verses that really ground us in our discussion of friendships. But for your personal life, Brother Jojo, do you have an example of someone who maybe tried to mislead you? Maybe bad people who tried to incorporate themselves in your lives. And do you also have an example of somebody who was like a Jonathan, who was always loyal to you as a friend in your lifetime?
Absolutely, Brother Martin, because I was also young once, like you four. After graduating from high school at the age of 18, I went to college at a place called UC Davis. I had a good friend who went to the same high school with me, and he actually became my, is that like
As
a
your roommate.
dorm mate? He became my roommate for the first year in college, and I thought I knew who he was from high school because we played basketball together, and we became friends through sports. But when we actually started living together, had it not been for our teachings that we've learned in the Church of Christ as to what is it that we should do, what is it that we shouldn't do, the things that are pleasing and displeasing to God, uh, I, it would have been. I would have turned out really, really, you know, not so strong in the faith because all the temptations were there, in front of me uh, every single day, throughout that first school year in college, and that's the type of friend where I can't blame him because he of course he didn't grow up in the Church of Christ. He didn't have a religious background, and so everything that he thought he was doing was okay. That's the first thing that comes to mind with regard to a friend that I thought was going to be a quote unquote true and loyal friend, but
Right.
it turned out that he was actually he could have been a strong influence in the negative way.
Hmm. Did he know, Paul, that you were very religious and that you were from the Church of Christ?
He did because when we were together in high school, we went to parties together, and
Hmm.
he knew that I wouldn't do.
Did you feel, Paul, that maybe he was starting to resent you a little bit, that you couldn't live the life that he wanted you to live with him?
After our first year at UC Davis, we actually parted, and
You had a falling out.
yeah.
And for the one who's been there the whole time, who's been a Jonathan, we all want a Jonathan in our lives, a loyal lifetime friend.
I have a wonderful buddy in the ministry. I don't know if he would like me to name him, but I'm sure he would have no problem. I'll tell him to check out this podcast after I mention him.
Thank you, Paul, so much.
His name is Brother Rod Bruno.
No way.
Yes. I believe he's your district minister there in Eastern
Yes,
Canada.
Paul.
Yeah, he's a wonderful friend. We started in the ministry at the same time back in 1985. So we became first year students in the Philippines in 85. And, we didn't know each other well. I came from Vallejo and he came from Sacramento. So prior to heading to the Philippines to study in the ministry, we met each other about a year before going to the Philippines, and we got acquainted that way. He was an officer in Sacramento. I was an officer in Vallejo, and we actually, didn't,
There's some
like
hesitancy.
each other very much at the start.
How come? Yeah, how
Uh,
come?
our personalities clashed at the beginning, but later on, second year, we actually lived together for 1 year at the dorms, and in the ministry. When you get to during our time, once you get to third year, then you're assigned to different local congregations, so you live apart from each other. But we went to school for 5 years together in the Philippines for the whole of 5 years. Same section, so we saw each other just about every day, and that's where the friendship developed. I guess we had the U.S. in common, so whenever we missed home and family and friends, we had that in common, and the friendship just developed until the time that. We were almost finished with our studies, and we were starting our fifth year in the ministry together. And he actually asked me to
Oh,
be his best man at his wedding there in the Philippines. And the
Wow.
friendship grew more. And when we finished our studies in the ministry after 5 years, and we were assigned here in the U.S., I was actually assigned back in 1990
mm-hmm.
in
Okay.
Oceanside, California. I think we call it Vista now, Sister Elke. And Brother Rod Bruno was assigned somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. I believe Everett, Washington was his first assignment. So we had not seen each other, since parting from school, but we always kept in touch throughout the years, and he's my go-to guy. Uh, when it comes to as ministers, we kind of bounce off
Of
ideas
course.
and problems, to each other, and whenever especially during the early years of our ministry, whenever there was something that I needed to know about our doctrine specifically, I would say, bro, hey, bro, I'd give him a call, bro, how would you go about answering this question? And he is one of those people that you can, rely on when it comes to, doctrines and teachings in our church. And that became, something that, I also, was privileged to get to know about him,
Wow.
the solid knowledge that he had about our teachings. And it's been we started in the ministry in 1985, so we're
Nice.
counting 31 years of friendship now.
Wow. But when he calls you, Brother Jojo, what does he ask you?
Uh, the goofy things that we talk about, just things that
For
friends
sure.
talk about, just buddies, knowing each other for 31 years now, it's like, oh, remember that? Oh, remember that? And we
Absolutely,
just
absolutely.
crack up and just remember what happened, 30 years ago,
Yes.
25 years ago. It's just a wonderful friendship that's developed throughout the decades.
Sometimes our friends don't always go straight to us, or when they do, it's because they're hesitant. They don't always do it because they're hesitant to have a confrontation or have a difference of opinion because we care about each other. Um, and that also translates to the goals that we have, the dreams that we have. Sometimes we have those friends who we've known all our lives, and then they just don't support our dreams or the direction that we're headed. So my question about to you, Brother Jojo, was when you decided or when you knew that you wanted to go into the ministry, were there those friends who didn't support that decision?
There were, simply because perhaps they didn't understand. And, looking back, one can't really expect uh, even a true or close friend to understand what it is that you're doing, because when someone enters the ministry, it means going away from all of your friends, and who knows when we're going to see each other again, because as you know, with us ministers, we are transferred from place to place, sometimes from city to city, sometimes from country to country. And perhaps those who were not as supportive as others simply thought of the same thing that I was thinking, which was, wow, this is the end of our friendship. You have to remember, Brother Martin, in the mid 80s, we didn't have internet yet. We didn't have social media. There was
Right.
really no way to contact each other unless you'd be, diligent enough to write letters. Because long distance phone calls back then, oh my goodness, cost a
Expensive.
fortune.
Phone cards.
So, that's probably what some were thinking.
And do guys write each other? Like, do we write letters to each other? I don't know.
No.
Wow. So, Brother Jojo, if not for an extreme situation, I mean, I don't want to say joining the ministry is extreme, but definitely for a situation that maybe isn't as special or as sacred as that. For those of us, when we encounter friends who don't always support our goals, like, oh, I want to go into the profession, or I decided to change my area of study. What advice would you have for some of us who we have our friends, we want to hold on to them, but they just can't seem to support our life decisions? What do we do?
I think the verse in the Bible that will help us with that, Brother Martin, is Proverbs chapter 20, verse 6 of the Living Bible version. It goes like this: most people will tell you what loyal friends they are, but are they telling the truth? So I think one of the best and most accurate measurements or gauges when it comes to having true friendship is, they're going to tell you the truth. Of course, it's going to be based on their feelings and experiences, but a true friend will let you have it, basically. Uh, you know how uh, when we were not as familiar with other people as we are with others,
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of guarded as to say, oh, well, if they ask you a question, does this look nice on me? Maybe someone who's not well acquainted enough, will say, well, yeah, that's great. But if you have a true friend, he or she will probably say that really looks ugly on you. Wear something else. That's what I call that's what
A
I call
true
true
friend.
friendship. So a true friend will tell you exactly what it is that you need to know, and they'll be super, super honest with you because they're your friends. They won't be afraid to hurt your feelings, especially. I'll give you an example, Brother Martin, and for everyone else.
Okay,
Uh,
Bob.
someone who may not be a true friend, when you ask them, okay, this thing that I'm planning, even if it goes against God's will, should I go for it? An untrue friend, not so true friend might say, well, that's up to you. Um, you know, I think if you If you think it's good, it's going to be good for you. If it's going to be good for your future, then go for it. But a true friend will say, you know what? You should know better because we grew up together, or, we've been friends for a long time. We have the same faith. We live by the same values and teachings of God. So why are you even asking me if this is okay when you already know that that goes against God's will?
Right.
That's a
Right.
true friend, in my opinion. The gauge of true friendship is, one who will tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not.
But what is your advice for those who really are looking to God and really, don't want to have so much interaction with other people, but really just want to focus on their faith, focus on their relationship with God, and have faith and trust that they'll be brought to the right people in the future?
That's an absolutely wonderful question, Sister LP. The Bible tells us this from the book of James, chapter 2, verse 23, from the Amplified version of the Bible. And the scripture was fulfilled, which says, Abraham believed God, and this faith was credited to him by God as righteousness and as conformity to his will. And he was called the friend of God. We have this wonderful example of a man who truly had the best friend that he could ever hope for in this world. He was a man named Abraham. Because of his faith and his obedience, God, told him, leave your place, leave everyone behind. I'm going to tell you to go to another place. At first, he didn't even know where God wanted him to go, but he obeyed because he had faith that God knew what would be best for him. Later on, there was an absolutely severe, extreme test when God once again tested Abraham and said, "Why don't you offer your son, your only son Isaac, to me as a burnt offering?" And without hesitation, Abraham was going to do it, but at the last moment, a messenger was sent by God in the form of an angel, and the angel told Abraham, "Don't lay a finger on your son, because God has seen your obedience." And so, in a nutshell, he became known as the father of faith eventually, and he also became known as the friend of God. I mean, if God is and will remain our friend, I think we've got it made for the rest of our lives, because if we have human friends, and that's necessary, whether your best friend be your spouse, and in my opinion, one of your best friends have to be your spouse if you're married. You have to have that kind of relationship as husband and wife. But if you're still single, if you're a kadiwa, a binhi, if you have a true friend, we have to always remember, he or she may be our best friend, but our friend is also limited as to what they can do for us, because they have to go. They might be going through their own trials and ordeals in life. I mean, you know, we can't really expect too much from a friend, even if that friend is a true friend, as we've used that term throughout this podcast. But if God is your friend, I think I've mentioned in more than a couple of worship services, if you had a choice, brethren, what if I give you a choice? What if I give you 100 friends that you can really count on, that will always be there for you, in times of sadness, in times of joy. Uh, and if you had to choose between, those 100 friends and God, who would you choose? If you had 1,000 friends, if you had 1,000,000 friends, and if you had to choose between that and God, uh, of course we would choose God. I mean, if God is your best friend, then you can go to him at any time of the day, of the evening. You can be lying there, on your bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, feeling desperate and almost to the brink of hopelessness, and all you have to do is get up and kneel and close your eyes and start, talking to your best friend who promises that whatever you ask for, uh, he will grant. Who promises that, don't be hopeless. How could you be hopeless? I'm here for you. And he also has his son who made the promise that whatever we ask for in his name, the Father will grant all of those things to us. And I know that that's been our experiences throughout our lives. We who have been, born and raised inside the Church of Christ, that, since the early days when we started attending the children's worship services or CWS, when we started to learn that, if I can have this kind of relationship with God, if He can be my best friend, then my goodness, it doesn't matter what happens to me. I'm going to be all right, for the rest of my life. And then, after that, He has that promise that if you continue to be diligent in serving Him and being faithful to Him, well, of course, there is, everlasting life awaiting us. So, if you don't have any really close or good or even true friends in this life, you always have God. Let Him be your best friend, because He's going to take care of you now and forever.
Thank you so much, Brother Joseph, for that guidance and how we should view and value friendships, especially the number one friendship in our life, which you have told us today is truly is God.
And ultimately, we've learned today, we've discussed how the fundamentals of a good friendship really is a foundation we need to understand and even to know how to be in a strong relationship with anyone. And like you mentioned, Brother Jojo, above all with God. He knows best. He knows when and who to bring into our lives and how much we can really impact one another. So thank you to our guests for joining us today. Crystal and Leonard, we appreciate your being here and sharing your stories with us today.
Oh yeah, anytime.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope this prompts, we really, really do hope that after listening to this, or maybe you've been listening to this whole thing with your friend, that, it prompts more heart-to-heart conversations amongst one another, showing how much you value one another, how much you're willing to be truthful to one another, how much you're willing to say, that doesn't work, that outfit, or, you're going in a way in your life that probably isn't what God wants you to do. Hopefully you have those kind of discussions, because that's the kind of discussions that we want to have in the Church of Christ as friends and as the kind of friendship that we want to have with God. So I'm Martin Zeruto.
And I'm Lois Paula Richardson.
And we're people talking love and relationships and friendships on INC Heart and Soul.
See you guys next time. Thanks.